The one thing that I remember when you competed, and I think it was a testament to a lot of the guys on your team as well, the very similar style, in the fact that what we would see with some of the ADCC guys or some of the jiu-jitsu guys in ADCC, they would be pulling guard or they would end up on their back. Maybe they would get taken down and they would have offensive guard. But if they couldn't sweep or submit from the bottom, it was over. Whereas the guys from your team, and I think your style especially, sort of started to really wrestle and kind of came into ADCC already with that advantage in wrestling, number one. And number two, really, really damn good with guillotines. And the style was a lot different than the guys in jiu-jitsu that we would see, like I said, losing in ADCC or even in the UFC at that time. Like jiu-jitsu was starting to decline. They were losing decisions because they weren't able to submit off their back. So what was it about your team and your style? Like, what did you do and how did you kind of come up with that strategy to fight in that different manner? Because I saw it. I mean, maybe this is just an assumption on my end, but you definitely look different. I saw a lot more guillotines from the Renzo team than a lot of the other teams. They were all trying to do arm bars and triangles, but it wasn't working, especially when the gi came off. So what was it? How did you guys figure out that you had to modify your techniques or game, or was it just kind of luck of the draw?
Yeah, so it's just one of those things that you learn with the experience, like in ADCC, if you pull, it's a -1.
Yeah.
Maybe not in the beginning of the match. In the beginning of the match, you could pull, but you see a lot of the matches, all right, you pull and then nothing happens. And then you get the full 5 minutes, the full 10 minutes. And then in overtime, you're going to have to pull. And then you pull and you take a -1 and it's over. You see a lot of matches end up like that. A lot of matches being lost with that -1. And I was like, man, I'm not going to go into this thing already taking a -1. Because you're not going to sweep these guys,
Yeah.
We had the huge advantage that we were here on the East Coast. We were here in New York, New Jersey. There's a lot of great wrestlers here, So I remember the way Renzo created the arm-man guillotine is because Renzo had already, pretty much been the first guy to play a sit-up guard, he would sit up. If you watch the De La Riva match, Renzo versus De La Riva, De La Riva actually sweeps him with the omoplata, which back then it was no points. So Renzo goes to the bottom. He puts him in butterfly guard. As soon as Renzo sits up and grabs the belt, he tosses De La Riva 2-0. He wins the match. It was the first, I think it was the first Brazilian Nationals. I competed in that as like a 16-year-old,
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward a few years, we live, living here in the United States. Renzo is trying to sit up and sweep the wrestlers, and they just won't get swept, because you no longer had the belt grip. And even if you have an overhook, when you try to sweep the guys, they post with the other hand. So what Renzo started doing is grabbing the head, because they keep the head up and they try to post. So Renzo would grab the head like a front headlock and sweep towards the head and get on top. So basically it was a modified butterfly guard sweep, and Renzo was sweeping all these really great wrestlers. He had like Rico Chiapparelli, he had like all these guys who were like, decorated wrestlers. But what the guys would do is they would start to back up. So as soon as Renzo would grab the head, they would start to back up. So as soon as the hips went back, Renzo started locking the guillotine. And I remember, man, clear as day, that one day we were in the Philly school. It was like, Riccardo, man, I started finishing this guillotine. Let me show you here. And it was with the arm in. There was no such. It was not called a guillotine. It was a gravata, which is a necktie. And guys would do it without the arm. That's how guys finish it back in the day. So Renzo was trying to sweep the wrestlers, and they would just push themselves back. And Renzo was starting to lock the guard. And the main adjustment, it wasn't like the gravata where you arch like an arm lock and you extend your leg. It's completely different. It's a side crunch and you pull your knees to your chest. That's how Renzo created the guillotine. It looks like the same move, but it's a complete different squeeze, And we had that, and then next thing we had all these wrestlers. And man, I just knew, man, if I don't sweep these guys, I'm not going to be able to do anything. Like we knew from training with guys like that, that this is exactly what was going to happen. So we had to figure out a way to improve our game and go into ADCC a little bit more ready. So Renzo made us wrestle a lot. I remember Sean Williams would bring us to one of the colleges in New York. We had wrestlers that would come. I would practice a lot of wrestling to try and improve the takedown game very specifically towards ADCCs. You knew that once a year, you're going to travel to Abu Dhabi. You're going to fight, these Russian guys, these wrestlers, like a Jeff Monson as an example. Yep. And you have to figure out how to beat these guys, So it was really a combination of the ADCC rule set together with us having so many wrestlers up here on the Northeast. You know, Jersey has great high school wrestling. New York has great high school wrestling. So these guys will come, and we knew exactly what was going to happen if we couldn't sweep. Whereas I think a lot of the guys that came from Brazil, they hadn't had the experience of grappling versus a really strong wrestler once you can't submit them. You know, someone that has a little bit of background.
I never thought of it that way, to be honest, you know, and I'm really glad that you gave me that explanation specifically on the mechanics of the arm in guillotine and the history of it. Because that's what I love to find out, is the history of a lot of the techniques, because it gives me a little bit more of an appreciation and understanding. And especially for somebody that was there when it kind of got innovated, now I kind of understand it a little even better just listening to you talk about it. And, you know, the one thing that I remember seeing you compete, you had a really good arm in guillotine as well. And while you were talking through it, I'm visualizing the match with Josh Barnett. That's how you ended up finishing it. So can you talk me through that match with Barnett? Because that, to me, that was a really impressive match. The guy was huge. He was a lot chubbier back then, but man, he was a pretty good wrestler, you know, Pancrase guy, good with leg locks. And I don't think too many people submitted him, and you were one of the first guys to do that in the absolute. So can you talk me through that match a little bit?
Yeah, man, Josh is like a tricky guy to fight because he's not necessarily a jiu-jitsu guy that's going to go past your guard and smash you, you know. But man, like if he grabs something on you, he's going to rip that thing off, you know. He was 290 pounds when I fought him. I was like 200. Wow. I was like, man, if the guy grabs something on me, he's going to, you know, he's going to hurt me. And he was trying to hurt me, you know. He knew that he was the bigger guy. He was trying to bully me around. And just from the experience of being in a couple ADCCs and the experience of, you know, Renzo used to go teach seminars, and I was like, Renzo, can I come in and, like, you know, you show moves on me? And always at the end of the seminars, we would train with these guys, you know, like, and, you know, no matter where it was, you had to train with everybody. So every once in a while, there would be a huge, like, football guy or some huge wrestler. So I had already had that, you know, that experience. So going into the Barnett fight, I knew that I had 5 minutes to get him tired and then another 5 minutes to score, you know. I always love using the omoplata to score on big guys. You know, like I don't like getting underneath and trying to do, like, you know, taking out the trash sweeps with really big guys, especially in no gi where you don't have that leverage, you know. So going into that match, I was trying to make him tired, eventually get an omoplata and sweep him, you know. I ended up getting the omoplata. I go for like a toe hold, and he attacks my foot, and he almost breaks my leg, man. So I popped out, and I could start to feel him getting tight. I could start to feel him just backing up and getting a little bit slower. So finally, I just collar tied him. And a lot of times, guys collar tie and they snap the head down into this arm. One of the things that we used to do, we used to grab here and snap it to the same side, so it surprised guys a lot, you know. So I snapped it. I jumped arm in guillotine. I kind of knew that I had it, but man, he was just so much bigger. And actually, the other day someone asked me to break it down, I could see my elbow like pointing up to the ceiling. I was like, man, how did I finish that? And then I waited, and you could see that the elbow is up, and it's not until I crunch and I get the elbow in front of me that the thing happens. You know, like it goes from here to here on the left side. And yeah, that's pretty much how he went. Like Josh ended up, you know, he submitted Dean Lister at one of the Minimum Warriors, I think. He went and did Nogi Worlds. He won Nogi Worlds. Like, he's definitely, like, you know, he won the UFC heavyweight title against Tour. He's a monster, man. Like I didn't know how that was gonna go, but it was a pretty decent game for that type of situation.